Hey, this is Lee, and I'm over here talking about the big picture in Chapter 1. So we start off with a big population. Maybe it's the population in the US or population in the world. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a sample from that, making sure that it's representative of the whole population, that it's non-biased. Once you have that sample, you can use that data to describe your statistics, to make some charts and some graphs and looking at your means and standard deviations. Once you have all those numbers, you can make these inferences about the whole population. We see this a lot when we talk about elections. It's almost like economists or statisticians are used as fortune tellers to actually predict the future. So this next study comes from 2012 when a bunch of US adults were asked what type of cell phone that they owned. Android, iPhone, BlackBerry, non-smartphone. Look at that flip phone. One way to organize data is to use a frequency table. So you've got your categories on the left-hand side and the number or the frequency on the right. To make a relative frequency table is a bit more complicated. And so on the right-hand side, instead of having the frequency, we're going to have a percent, or what's called a proportion. And the way you find that is you take the number in the category and you divide that by the total sample size seen here. So the proportion for a sample is actually p hat, but the proportion for the population is just p. So if I want to find the proportion of adults that don't own a cell phone, I would take 293 and divide that by 2,253 to get a grand total of 0.13 or 13%. So this relative frequency table shows the proportion that fall in each category. If you take a look, that right-hand column sums to 1. This next study is about 60 adults with gum disease. They were asked the number of times per week they used to floss before their diagnosis. And so the last type of frequency we want to talk about is cumulative relative frequency, which means if I have flossings per week of 6, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up everything before it. So I'm going to add up 0.05, 0.1833, 0.3, and 0.45 to get a value of 0.9833. You can think of cumulative relative frequency as accumulating something. So I'm not just asking for people who floss 6 times, I'm asking for people who floss 6 or less times, 6, 3, 1, or 0. So I have to add all of those relative frequencies up to get my cumulative relative frequency. But the real question is, what happens to all those floss sticks? Do they just end up in the ocean in some turtle's nose?